head of state still wants to keep us in lockdown at the moment. I feel sorry for all the businesses that can't open. You know, the restaurants, the cafes, the pubs. It's a really tough time for a lot of people.
All right, guys, we're live on Facebook. Welcome, everyone. We're today with Luis Salavarria, real estate investor based on Texas. He's been an investor almost 20 years, I think. And
Yeah,
he's
14.
been specialized in investments, especially one-family houses is what they carry the most in their companies. And we're going to be asking him everything we can. If you catch this video later on, well, you can always type in your messages and we will catch them later and Luis can answer them. We will always try to solve anything that you want to know. And the thing about real estate is that it's such a huge universe. There's so much to know here, and it upgrades and updates daily. It's like almost impossible to catch up with everything that goes on in real estate. And most people don't know that it's not that difficult to own a property, and even not too difficult even to be an investor. Some people say, wow, being an investor, you need a lot of money. Well, that really depends. There are ways to work around how to buy, how to leverage for money. Of course, that sometimes if you buy the wrong asset, it can be something that goes against you, works against your money. So it can be a liability, what they say. But how to turn it into a favorable asset. We're going to be asking Luis today. So how you doing, Luis, today? What time is there today? Right now?
5:30 right now in Texas.
So we have 1 hour difference with the East Coast. So make sure you're not muted.
Here.
Okay, it cuts off a little bit sometimes. So tell me about you, Luis, about your beginnings in real estate. How did you get to this point? How do you start? What triggered you to be an investor?
Sure. Well, I don't know if I should start by giving you my presentation or not, but I can actually tell you right now. I started investing back in 2001. I was living in Venezuela. I'm actually from Venezuela. So I was living in Venezuela and I got laid off, at the crisis, in 2001. At that time, I decided, I was still looking for a job, but I was deciding at that time that I was going into business, into, doing something on my own, to be an entrepreneur. And that's what I did, I started after that my own language, academy with some partners, some people that I knew. Then after that, we started a transportation company. I did that for a while too. And then I got the news of my wife telling me that, we were going to move to Rio, basically, well, to Brazil, and at that time.
She told you, hey, we're moving.
Sorry, what?
She just told you, hey, we're moving.
Pretty much. She just told me, hey, by the way, I'm being transferred to Brazil, and what do you want to do? I'm like, let's go. I didn't know anybody. I didn't even know Portuguese, to be honest.
Really?
Wow. I didn't know anything, and I said, let's go. I'm following you. I know you have your career. I'll find something. I'll do something. I made the decision right there and then that I was gonna follow my wife. I married her to be with her, not to be apart from her. Right. And it was like this rush of like doing that, like at this in the moment, But of course, it took time. We had to take visas. We have to do all that, and eventually we did move to Brazil. And at that time, I have read books by Robert Kiyosaki. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you know, but we have a lot of books from him. But the main one that I saw at that time that I read was, Poor Dad, Rich Dad. And it marked me. It was like, these guys is just like exploded in my mind, And I said, I have to do something like that. Even though I knew that he was from the US and I know that a lot of the things that I saw on the book didn't apply to myself in Brazil, I still said, let's just go after that, and so I did. I found a piece of land, I found somebody that could help me build some houses there. And this piece of land was, I don't know, like 3 blocks from the beach, in the town that we were in. It was a very nice beach as well. So I got an architect, I got everything. I didn't know all of these people. I didn't know the contractor or how to pull permits. I didn't know how to do any of that. I had to learn just because I wanted to learn. I wanted to take action. That's what I did. So I did that, and I built 5 houses in this little piece of land, and I got them sold. And I'm telling you, it wasn't easy, especially at the beginning when you're planning, when you're, researching, and when you're educating yourself. It's not easy. I mean, you have a lot of people going against you, people that love you, they're going to tell you, what are you doing? You're crazy. Like, you should find a job. You should do this. You should do that. Right. But in the end, it's like, are you going to pay my bills? I guess not. Right. So I'm going to have to do it on my own. And that's what I did,
So you did go with some cash to Brazil.
Yeah. I mean, we did have some cash, but it's like what you said at the beginning, where to invest it, right? So you have to do a lot of research, especially at the beginning. I didn't know anything. I didn't what to invest in or what to buy, or if I should stick to, something else or do something entirely different, But then I said, people always need where to live. They need a place to stay. They need a roof over their heads. So that's what really got me into real estate.
I admire that mentality, because actually what the book, and you guys are invited to find out about this book if you haven't read it, about The Rich Dad, Poor Dad from Robert Kiyosaki, is incredible how it establishes a mindset about growth, about the mentality of being on your own instead of depending on someone else. When you can grow skills and put them out there to serve the public and get an income out of your abilities, right? So it's incredible. Yeah, it looks like you kind of had that mentality already. Did you read the book in Brazil, or you read it in Venezuela?
No, I read it. I remember that I read it in Venezuela, still in Venezuela. Okay. And but I had it in the back of my mind. I was, at that time, I was still in Venezuela before going to Brazil, and I had started my language academy, and then I moved to, I also opened this transportation company, and I was working in those two, but I still had that thing, that told me, maybe we have some time for real estate. Sometime we're gonna have something in real estate, and we did. When we moved to Brazil, I said, let's go. I didn't even know, as I told you, that I was gonna be doing that when we got there. And it took me, I would say, a year to actually just get everything organized, to find the piece of land that I wanted in the location that I wanted, that I researched, and I guess I expected to do well, because that's really the point of real estate: location, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So did you have any kind of mentor that were guiding you when you got into real estate in Brazil? Especially, you said you landed there in 2001, right?
No, 06. In 2001, I was laid off. So in 2006, we moved to Brazil.
In 6. And when did you move to Texas? In 1 year?
2011. So I was in Brazil for 5 years, right? From 2006 till 2011. And in those 5 years, that's when I did a lot of my my first fix and flips, and I did a lot of things. I built from the ground up. I didn't actually tell you this, but I also invested in fix and flips. So what I did when we moved from the little town that we were in, we moved to Rio de Janeiro, and being the big city that is, I couldn't, build anything from the ground up just because, the land is so expensive. So I had to pivot and I had to think, okay, if I want to do something with real estate, it's going to have to be something else, So I got my contractor, he came with me from that little town. He came with me and I told him, like, we need to do something else. What about if we find old apartments here in Copacabana, which is one of the biggest, and most famous beaches in the world, to be honest. What about if we find apartments that are old that need remodeling, and then we buy them, we try to buy them, right, low enough so we make a profit. And we did that with about 10 apartments in a period of about two years, 2.5 years. So we did that for a while and we made some money there too. So we've been like, researching and doing all these different things, not only like building from the ground up, but also like fix and flip and different things.
And without any background in real estate at all, you just jumped into this.
No, I'm an engineer by trade, but because that's what I went to school for. But to be honest, I always had the that little spark, in the back of my mind that told me, I want to do things on my own. I want to do something for myself. And that's what I told my wife when she told me, like, hey, we're moving to Brazil. I'm like, let's go. Because I didn't even know what I was going to do. But I said, I have my brain and that's all I need.
So before you got to Texas, did you sell everything before coming to the US?
I haven't sold everything. We still have some stuff in Brazil. We still have like 10 properties in Brazil.
So did you find people there that were speaking Spanish, or you were just learning Portuguese?
No, I had to learn Portuguese.
Really?
Yeah, I definitely. I'm fluent in Spanish, of course, but I'm fluent also in Portuguese, and I still have, my apartments there being managed by people that speak Portuguese, and I speak Portuguese like, every other day. Pretty much.
So you started a career in real estate practically in Brazil. So
yes.
When you came to the U.S., what did you notice of difference? Because I'm guessing you jumped in right away in real estate in the U.S. So what was the difference that you captured right away? What's the difference in real estate?
Well, one of the things that really struck me is the level of efficiency that you have in the U.S. You can research pretty much about everything, and everything is somewhere, either paid or free, but you can find data, you can find information. So that's one of the main things that I know are really working for you if you're here in the US. Say, for example, you want to, I was telling you about this offline, but I found somebody that had abandoned their house. And the only way that I could find her was because I know how to do that. And I know that there are some programs that you can find out there to find people that don't want to be found, or, people that are not really listed in the phone book, if there is such a thing anymore. But so you can actually do that online. And that's how I found this lady who eventually sold me her house, which eventually led to me making, a lot of money.
So people that you met also reach out to you to get properties, to help them buy properties?
What
do people try to get help from you? Like instead of going to a realtor, they come to you for advice on how to buy a property? Do you help people? Do you help people buy properties?
Yeah.
Because I heard you have like a program that you help people with small amounts of cash to get.
Yeah, I do that too, and it's like small amounts of cash. I do know how you can invest if you have little to no cash. I mean, you have basically two options, right? You can try to learn everything by yourself, the slow way, of course, of doing that, going online, going to workshops and all that, joining Facebook groups and all that. So you can do that and getting information that way, at least to get you to a point where you can actually do your own marketing, which is basically go out, get a list of people that, for example, are in pre-foreclosure, and that means that, you know, the bank or the county is going to take their houses because they haven't paid them. So you can actually go out there, do door knocking, which is one of the terms that you have in marketing in real estate. You go out there, get talking to these people. I've done that too. And I've actually put, you know, properties under contract doing that, because they have actually called me back if I left a message, or if I sent a postcard, or, you know, if I actually went there and knocked their house, then their door, you know, by myself. So that's one of the ways you can do that. The other way is, of course, leveraging other partners, you know, that you may have in the business. And what I mean by that is, you know, go out and in these groups, these Facebook groups, you can actually find people that know and tell them, I will follow you. I will do the heavy lifting. Just tell me what I need to do. So you would learn about their operation and maybe invest with them if you find a property yourself. If you find a property, meaning somebody that wants to sell that property and there is a way to make money out of that property. So those are basically the two ways that you can do right now if you want to start in real estate with little to no money. If you have money, right, because you have that other side of the coin, if you do have money, then we also have other programs for that too, because there are different industries, you know, different strategies that you can actually do if you have money in real estate or to invest in real estate.
What if you get a person that has, let's say they have a regular job and they have some savings, let's say $25,000. What would you recommend a person that has no idea about real estate, but they say, I want to invest in real estate. I want to do something with this because I know it's good, but I don't know how to do it. What would you tell them to put their money? How? Would you tell them to buy a one-family house, an apartment, to buy a land? What would you recommend to a person that is starting with a little money?
Sure. So let me tell you. We actually have a program like that, but before I even say anything like that, because I don't want to make this like into a sales speech type of thing. I don't want to do that. I want to tell you what I would do if that person was me, right? Because I was there at some point. So if that person was me, I would, first of all, join in Facebook groups and meetup groups and, you know, real estate association groups. That's pretty much free, you know? So I always recommend to people, join them, because you will learn a ton out of doing that, just by that alone, you know? And then I would go out and talk to people. Well, not necessarily go out physically, because I know in some places that's not possible right now. But like, you know, you can still comment on their posts. You can still ask them. I still do that, you know? When I have a specific question about something and I know somebody else is an expert on that subject, I will ask him, you know? And then, you know, I can always tell them like, hey, you know, by the way, what do you recommend that I do with this 25K that I have, you know? I wouldn't say it exactly like that, but, you know, in the end, people are going to do business with people that they know, like, and trust, you know? So they have to know you and trust you. So they have to build that relationship. You have to build that relationship, right, with them and they with you. After doing that, you know, one of the ways that you can invest your money, of course, is getting into, for example, a fix and flip house, right? It really depends on how much you have, but let's say it's, you know, 25, as you said. If the house is worth, you know, 150, for example, and it needs, I don't know, 15 in repairs and closing costs and all that, it actually gets you to that 25 mark. So let's say you have to put in 25K to get this house that cost you 60, for example, right? So you're 60, but that 60 actually comes from the bank, and you're putting only the 25 that you have. So then you remodel it, you sell it for 150 and realize that money. Basically, you make that money, you earn that money. That's called fix and flip. So that's one way of getting into the real estate business. And that's what a lot of people know from all these TV programs that you see out there, you know? Now, that's one thing. You can also do other things as well, like buying rental property, for example. I know people that work in the corporate world, and they don't have time to do what I just told you, like, to get a contractor to oversee, what they're doing. They don't even know what they're doing, so they don't have time or even care to do that. They just want to invest their money, right? So there is also another way to do that, which is basically buying a rental property. You may find a rental property on the market right now, or you may or you may want to try to just get a property from somebody else, like a wholesaler, that doesn't need a lot of money. So you invest that 25 and you keep the money yourself in equity in that property. So you get basically the cash flow, the monthly cash flow, you get it, every month, basically.
So what are we talking about when we say closing costs? How much is that? Can you explain the closing costs?
So closing costs are just, usually when you close a property, I always advise anyone to close with a title company. They're called different things in different places, right? But that's just basically a place where they make sure that the title of the deed, basically the title of that property is good and it's clear, so they can actually give it to you. So you can actually buy the property knowing that you are now the rightful owner of that property.
And if there's any cloud there, they just clear everything before you repossess it.
Exactly. So they go through that process for you, and you have to pay for that, of course. So they actually give you title insurance for that.
So the insurance comes out of the closing costs.
Exactly. So basically, closing costs are just things to do with the closing of the property. So the final closing of the property, that's when you take possession of the property, you take possession of the keys, and you can actually say that the property is yours. So for that to happen, there are some costs, and usually title companies, they have an attorney that oversees all the documentation and all of that, basically. So because there are a lot of documents that you have to sign.
So is that a kind of a percentage of the whole purchase price?
Yeah, it's usually about 2.5%.
2.5%.
Yeah.
Let's say 3%. And how much money do you need to put down for any property?
That really depends on the deal. Because if you're talking about getting a property on market, so it's actually on the market, they're usually going to ask for an investment property. They're going to ask for 25% down. And when I say they, it's a bank. So that's kind of normal, right? Now, you can always find different ways to do that. There are programs out there, FHA, for example, here in the US, I'm talking about here in the US, federal programs, basically, where they help you get into a property for like 3.5%. And veteran affairs loans, or like, VA loans, basically military people can actually get this type of loans. And for those, you may find properties that you can actually buy without any down payment at all. So there are programs out there like that.
No down payment at all. You have to be a veteran, right?
But you have to be either a veteran or in the military. So you have to be active. Either active. So you have to have had a military background. Is what I mean. Like either active or
Okay, let's say you're not a veteran, but you have you want to do an FHA. So how do you qualify for FHA to do only 3.5% down? How do you qualify for that? What do you need to be?
Let me tell you something else before we go down the road. The FHA applies for that. Since that's a federal program, it helps people that want to live in the property. That's not really for investment properties. Right. So what I have seen is that if you buy the property with an FHA, you have to ideally, right, to be like on the legal side, you have to live in the property for at least a period of time. They say at least a year. After that, you can always, just find another property and move out and keep that one as a rental. Now, what you need to qualify for that is just a lot of things that you need. and that's, I'm not really suited for that list, but I can always refer you to a realtor that knows about that.
Okay.
Realtors actually know more about that than I do. I'm
Yeah.
actually an investor. So.
But I heard that the FHA programs, they require like a 3.5% down, and you'll need as big as a credit score as for a regular traditional loan, right?
That part is usually true, but then again, like, I don't know exactly what those requirements are, because I usually don't do that. I don't buy FHAs because they don't work. They don't apply to me. I'm an investor, so I'm not planning to move into one of those properties. Now, having said that, you can have that as an option. You can always find, for example, look at this scenario. You find a fourplex, which is just basically a property with 4 units in it. So you find this fourplex. You can buy it with an FHA. You can live in one of the units, and of course, I'm not going to expect you to live in the whole 4, so you can only live in one unit. Then you can rent out the other 3.
Can you get an FHA for that?
Sorry?
Can you get an FHA deal with that?
Yes. Yeah, you can. Because you're actually living in the property, right? So that's how it works. So you can always find properties like that. If you find a property like that, like a multi-unit property, then the FHA loan is just like the best program out there. And you should definitely take advantage of that, if you can.
Make a little recap on this for people that may want to know about how to buy a property. And let's say they qualify for an FHA, they buy a $100,000 property, and they get a 3.5% down. That's $3,500 down only from a $100,000 property, right? Then you have a 3% closing costs. Then that's $6,500 total. What other costs they need to have?
You may have holding costs, and holding costs are just the mortgage that you have to pay, the utilities, everything that you have to pay while you have the property.
That's monthly after they buy.
Yeah, but if you think about it, if you haven't rented it out yet, right, you still have those numbers to account for. You really have to take care of that beforehand, because it's still gonna come out of your pocket, basically.
Right.
So let's say that the house is not really like that fourplex is not really in the best shape, and you're gonna have to do something to them, like remodel a little bit, maybe paint and change the flooring, carpet, or whatever that they have there, and that takes you a month. So you still have to pay the mortgage for that month and for the utilities and all that you have, gas, electricity, water, all that. So you still have to pay a little bit while you're conditioning your place. And then if it takes you, say, a month to find tenants for that, after it's all repaired, if it takes you a month, that means that you're going to have to hold the property for 2 months. So you have to have enough money for those 2 months. You see what I mean? So,
yeah.
So that's how you work it. So you work all the numbers, and basically it comes down to, say, for example, in this example that you said, 100,000, and to buy this fourplex, you're going to need probably 10,000, something like that. That's kind of what I would expect. Of course, it really depends on what the condition is of the property and all that. But
okay, so let's say this person buys a property that they want to flip, and they buy a $100,000 property, and they use, like they say, and I use, for example, in closing costs and everything else, I use the 25 grand, right? And now I have to do repairs. Now, and I don't have more money. So how can I get money to do the repairs?
So you take that into consideration before you buy the property. Always before. I mean, you have to see something, Emilio, which is the only thing that you control is the price that you're buying the property at. Everything else is really out of your control. Like, if the property needs 10,000 in repairs, even if you say, I want to pay 5, that's irrelevant. I mean, it still needs 10,000 in repairs, So that part you don't really control. Now, what you do control, and you should be able to work out before you buy the property, is how to know that number, how to know that it's going to need 10,000 and not 20,000 or 5,000. That's what you need to do. But after you do that, you're going to know that, okay, repairs are, say, 10,000 in this example, or 25,000, whatever. Say 25,000. So if you are buying a property directly from the seller, you can negotiate with them and tell them, hey, this house, I like it very much, but I know that it's going to need at least 25,000 in repairs to make it, presentable for market, So I need you to discount that price. So basically we have, in the real estate world, we have a formula, that I don't know if you've heard it, but, I'm going to tell it to your audience anyway, which is basically the maximum offer that you can give for any property is the market value once the property is repaired, which is called the ARV, after repair value. That 70% of that minus that figure that I gave you for repairs. So that's the formula: 70% of ARV minus repairs. That's a maximum that you are pretty much allowed to offer to this guy. If you pay more, then you're putting yourself, out there for failure. It's going to be more difficult for you to make it that way.
Okay, but back to the example, and back to the example of people trying to buy, and let's say I bought $100,000 property that I know is worth 175, and I spend my 25 grand I'm all in. I have the house now. Now I need another $30,000 to repair it, right? Can I get a loan for the repairs alone?
Yeah, I'm sorry that I missed that point. So yeah, so when you make your numbers, you go to the bank, and the bank can be, Wells Fargo, Chase, or
another bank, or I can do it the same when they gave me the loan for the mortgage.
Just like, bear with me. So it won't be one of those banks, but you go to a bank. I can actually tell you then later what those banks are or who they are. They're usually called, hard money lenders or private lenders. Okay. So their interest rates are higher than a bank, normal bank. But a normal bank, and when I say normal, it's just like, your institutional banks like Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, anything like that. They won't lend you to do this type of business. They're thinking of, I would lend you if the house is repaired already. If the house is market ready, I will lend you on that, because you don't need to make any repairs. Now, if it does need repairs, then I'm not the guy for you. That's what they say, right? Now, you go to one of these other lenders, which work with this, day in, day out. They will offer you terms for you to borrow say, for example, 60,000 that was the purchase price, plus 30,000, which is the repairs. And so you would actually get a loan for 90,000, not only for the purchase price, but like for the rehab price, the remodel price as well. And that's how you cover that expense.
But there's something called construction loans, right? That's the same thing, right?
Yes. There are also construction loans as well. Yes.
They only lend you to repair, but you have to pay them like a small mortgage for that.
Yeah. But now construction loans, I mean, I haven't used, to be honest, construction loans, but I do know that they take time as well, because they go through normal banks as well. Most of them actually do, I think.
Now, somebody wants to know here, what about if you have some good amount of money and not good credit? Can you get something out there?
Yes.
With hard money lenders only?
You can find something. It really depends on what I just told you. Like, if you're looking for a property on the market, for example, and you're planning to get a loan from a normal bank, they may have their own restrictions and say, like, even if you have a lot of money, they may say that you don't qualify for a loan with them. They may say that. Now, there are always ways to buy properties, even if you have a low credit score. I was telling you about that offline before the meeting, that there are programs or there are strategies out there that you can use to buy things like that, even if you have money. So that are things that can actually help you do that.
Now I remember in 2006, 7, the properties were so expensive that the banks, didn't have any clients to lend them because nobody were, to get a loan, you need to qualify, right? So nobody would qualify because people that get loans are usually middle class. So no middle class will qualify to get these expensive properties. So the loans were like really easy to get, even low down payments, even zero down payments, even with bad credit. It's like the banks gave out everything just to do business, and that's what happened with the finances in the U.S. after that year. Is there anything like that in the market now to buy without money, without credit? Anything like that?
Let me just compare 2008 with COVID world right now, right? Because I know there are some people out there that are concerned about maybe the real estate world being impacted like it was then, and to be honest, they don't have a base, just by going off of the numbers. You know what? Let me just show you, if I may.
Yeah,
Can you make me a co-host so I can share a slide, so I can actually give you this slide and like share it with your people as well? It's pretty cool, like to see these numbers. Okay, let me just do this. It's this one right here. Okay, perfect. Okay. Now look at this.
Mhm.
So it's funny because some people are saying right now that the crash may be coming or whatever.
Yes.
Not really, and not at all, actually.
Mhm.
Let me show you this graph right here, for example. 94% of all zip codes in the US have had positive growth over the past year. 94%, which may be counterintuitive because a lot of things happen right now. They may tell you otherwise, but it's not really true. It's actually 94% of zip codes in the US have had positive growth, right? Now, another thing, low mortgage rates right now are here to stay. They actually have boosted also affordability. So people that had money before and were thinking about buying a house, banks have actually made it easier for them to do this, because it's more affordable now. It costs less, basically. Now we have another little graph, and I'm going to show you just for these 4 graphs, the other 2 and these 2, and that's it. I just wanted to make that point.
Go ahead. Yes.
So we have, inventory continues to decrease over the last, 4 years, including 2020.
Yeah.
You see the graphs, and they tell you a story of, people are buying. A lot of people are buying.
Yeah.
A lot of real
people
estate.
are selling, not many selling, really.
Exactly. That's what that means. That's exactly what that means. And that's what I'm going to show you here too. Existing and pending home sales have actually increased, even like during COVID, over the past year. And they have increased by 9%, even more than 9%.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's just, like mind blowing. It tells you that housing is strong, that, we also have other indicators for that, other graphs. I'm not going to show you those, but the trend is here to continue. So values are still going to increase. And this is the point that I wanted to get before. Lending standards really don't compare to 2008, what you said, right? In 2008, lending standards were really, really lax, and, they didn't really care too much about the buyer. They just cared about making the loans.
Yeah.
And they got into trouble for that. Now we have a really, really strong market, even though lending standards are actually tight. So, and that's basically going to the point of the question that you just told me, right? Even so, right, we have a really hot market right now in real estate, but people have to be qualified for those type of loans. They have to have at least, in the 700s, like 720s or 730s for their credit scores. And they have to have at least 30% in equity. So they have to come up with 30% down to buy these properties. LTV just means loan to value. So that means that the bank is going to lend you up to 70% LTV. So up to 70%. The other 30% you have to come up with. So another thing that tells you that, you know, housing is strong is that you have a vacancy rate for rentals really, really low. So that means that if you buy a property, chances are that it will stay, you know, rented.
Yes.
And so I'm not going to go into that. I'm not going to go into this one right now. So I'm going to stop sharing. But so I did want to tell you that, just because I know that some people may be thinking that, you know, is it the right time to invest in real estate right now? And I'm going to say just one thing. I'm going to tell you something that I tell, you know, everyone that I know. The best time to invest in real estate was 20 years ago. And the second time to invest in real estate is today.
So this goes for a buyer, you mean? What about
for anyone that wants to have money investing in real estate? For what I showed you, right? I mean, you have growth, you have a strong market, and that's not only here in Texas. Of course, in Texas is really, you know, like really, really good right now, but that applies to pretty much everywhere, except a few cities, in certain places, in a few cities where everything's like really, really expensive. And that would be like, you know, San Francisco, New York, Chicago. And even in those places, I'm sure that you can find different, like in the suburbs or anything like that, that you can actually find good deals right now. People need places to live. And that's always been the case, and it always will be.
So what about if a seller contacts you right now and it tells you, is it a good time to sell my property right now? What do you think? What would you tell them?
Yes, also, because as you know, like the market is so strong right now that pretty much whatever you put out to sell will sell. It's actually more difficult for people like us, like investors, you know, to find a really, really good deal, just because there are so many people trying to snatch up these properties.
The good thing about the market today as a seller is that there's much, much more demand than supply. So that, you know, what happens with the prices, that they're supposed to make more expensive whatever inventory there's left. So
exactly.
As a seller, I think is a very good time to sell. But the thing is, you know, we knew back in 2008 that it was a devastation, the economy. But right now is a lot of confusion. And I also work the stock markets. And I don't know if you know about stocks, but there's a period of confusion. They go up and down. There's instability, uncertainty in the markets, and that affects the real estate. Also, people don't really know if it's a good time to buy or to sell. And so that's why many sellers stay put and don't do nothing. That's why they're not selling. But I think it all depends what they're looking for. I met a lot of people now, they want to relocate. So it's, of course, it's a good time to sell. I wanted to ask you another question. Do you have partners in business?
I do. People have invested with me. And so one of the programs that we have is that we find a property, we analyze it, we see if it's going to make money, you know, and we look for partners to invest with us, and they get a little bit, a little piece of the action, pretty much, you know. So we have done that. We are still doing that, and the good thing is that we're actually getting to bigger properties, bigger unit count properties, you know, like multifamily. So we have right now 20 properties, mostly are single families, but we're getting into, you know, we have a couple of duplexes, which are just 2 units in one mortgage, basically, and then a triplex, which is the same, just 3 units in one mortgage. But we are actually looking for bigger units, like, you know, 13 unit. I'm looking at a deal with 13 units right now. And, you know, it's a way for us to grow, but to grow together, you know, because the investor that comes along with us, he's going to make money, or they're going to make money. We are going to be happy with them being there just because we're bringing that part that is missing. And we are also basically making the deal work, because we are, you know, the foot on the ground. We're actually the people that have the property manager. So we have that, you know, relationship, you know, with them and with the tenants. So we know how to work the market and all that. So having, going back to your question, yes, yeah, you can definitely invest through third parties or like being a partner. And I'm actually using partners right now. Yes.
Do you always had the same partner, or you're open to meeting new partners for depending?
No, I actually have
Can you
several.
partner with somebody specific for a certain deal only?
Actually, we have several partners, and we are definitely open to talking to new people that may want to learn a little bit more about what we do and what to invest. And a lot of things are going on in the market right now, and I'm there not only to guide people through that process, but also to teach them. Because I like to teach as well. I like to to be able to show others what nobody showed me when I was learning. I like doing that too.
That's a way to pay back. Yeah, the more you
Pretty
pay
much.
back, the more you sow and reap better fruits in the future.
Sure.
It's you unlock the doors of abundance that way, giving back. And do you consider bringing in, for example, what about if you get a local realtor that brings you a very good deal, and he wants a part of the deal for giving you a lead? Otherwise, he will give it to another investor. Would you bring him in the deal? Why? Why not? And how?
Well, I would treat him basically like any other investor. I have dealt with other investors like that. And I'm telling you, like a lot of investors that I know are realtors. I'm not a realtor per se. My wife is a realtor, for example. So what we do when we go out is like, if they want to speak to a realtor, they speak to my wife. If they don't want to speak to a realtor, they speak to me. So that's just, a side note. But if a realtor came with, like to me with a deal, I would have to look into that deal just to see if it is a deal, first of all. Because sometimes, I guess they think that it's a deal. It may not be a deal, So that's what I'm saying to you. I always go through the process of analyzing that deal using, my, one of the calculators that we have, the proprietary calculators that we have to analyze those deals. And if it's a good fit, I don't see any reason why we couldn't partner, I wouldn't have a problem with that for sure.
But if a realtor only brings in the deal and that's it, what's the percentage that you would give a person like that? Just to get a deal. Otherwise, you don't get a deal.
It really depends, because usually for that type of scenario that you're talking about, it wouldn't really be a percentage. It would be just a fixed amount. And because there are some people that do that, and these guys are called wholesalers. So what they do is just they find a property, for $80,000, for example. And they just they say to the seller, great, you're willing to sell for 80, great. I will buy it for you. I will buy it, from you at 80. And they just turn and they say to their people, to their investor friends, hey, so I've got this house, and the guy is asking, for 80, I will sell it to you for 85. That way they make some money in the middle and they're out of the negotiation, but they get paid.
Yeah, they have to put some money in escrow first, and then if they don't sell it in 30 days, probably they lose the money.
Yeah, but that don't. You remember that there are ways around that. That's if you're negotiating with the seller directly, you don't have to go the 1% or 2% or whatever of the purchase price to buy these properties. You can just tell them, hey, what the way we usually do it is, we pay you a couple of $100 just to have the option to buy the property from you, and you give me 30 days or 45 days to go ahead and sell it. So you don't really have to tie up a lot of your money by doing that. So that's also another strategy that you can do if you're starting out, and if you don't have, that's actually goes hand in hand with the person that asked that question about not having a great credit score and having some money. Because if you have a credit score, you don't qualify for the bank, but you can still do this because nobody's qualifying you. You're actually selling the contract. You're actually assigning the contract.
Right.
So you're not really selling the property. You're selling the right to buy the property.
Yeah,
which is different, right?
you see a lot of that here. You don't need a license or nothing. You just see a house in the market. For example, that's how they do it here. I see a house in the market. This Joseph is selling his house, right? I go and put an offer, and I just tell him that I'm going to put like an escrow money, like $1,000, $500, something like that, and then to give me 30 days. In those 30 days, I find a buyer to buy the contract. Then he takes the contract, and then we do the paperwork on the new buyer's name. But with this guy, I put the fee on top of what he's getting. Let's say now he has to pay a contract for $2,000. I can include that in the contract, and then I'm out, and then they just finish the transaction themselves. And you don't need a license or anything like that. And a lot of people are making a lot of money like that here, a lot. But the thing is, in the East Coast here, nobody really wants to deal a lot with wholesalers because they're overpricing a lot the properties. They want like a big fee on top, and right away when they offer a property, you know that it's not worth it because all the fee on top they're putting. So I don't know if they're doing really well, and there's a lot of people doing this. Now back to asking you a question. What about if a homeowner that is not paying his mortgage for a long time already? He feels that he's out of there, and he comes to you and say, how can you help me with this? What would you offer as help for a person that is really behind their mortgage and there's no chances they will be back there paying their mortgage?
Let's say I've seen actually people like that, and let's say people go through hardship. I've seen that they done left and right, especially right now. But so what I would tell them as a buyer and them as just a seller, I would see, in all of the tools that I have, I would see the one that is actually best for them. I would try to see, what about if you want, what do you want to do? I would ask them. And usually they tell you like, hey, I just, I'm done. I just want to get out of it. And if I make, a few bucks, perfect. And they just do that. You're solving their problem. They just want to be out for a few $100 or a few $1,000. So you solve the problem by giving them that, and then your problem would be how to market that property, or how your exit strategy is what I mean. You either keep it for yourself as a rental, or fix it and sell it, as a fix and flip, or you find somebody else to get the deal from you and you become a wholesaler. So you have to find which strategy actually works for that deal. But that would be the second part of the equation, right? The first part would be, talking with the seller and negotiating with them to see what they want. It really comes down to what they want. You cannot really tell them like, you should do this, you should do that, because if that's not what they want, eventually they won't really sell it to you because you're not really solving their problem. And that's basically what it is.
Yeah, if anybody's watching now and you have issues with your mortgage, you're behind and there's no chance that you will keep paying them, first recommendation is don't abandon it. We've seen here in New York, New Jersey, a lot of zombie houses that people just abandon it because they get scared because the bank starts putting the pressure. They sell it to collection companies and they start pressuring the people. If the house is still under your name, you still can sell it. And maybe you can get a profit on that. So you better connect with somebody that knows about real estate to find out if the house has any equity. It doesn't matter how long you've been in default, not paying it, how bad and ugly the house looks, you can still find out. And maybe the property is worth more than what you owe. And maybe you can just find the buyer with that. I recommend you don't abandon it. That's never a good thing, because if you abandon it and then the bank repossesses it, then they sell it for much less price. Then for the remaining taxes unpaid, they go after you and they confiscate anything. But if you just sell it, then you can get rid of that debt. You're out of the debt of taxes. Always try to do something with the property, and don't let it go. Don't let it. You're going to say something?
Yeah, let me just tell you a story, because you reminded me of something that happened to me with somebody that did abandon their property, right? So about, I don't know, a few years ago, 2-3 years ago, I was looking, I found this abandoned house, in an area that I was looking to buy houses in, right? So I found this house and I was trying to locate the property, not the property, the owner. So I was looking for the owner, and I have all these services that I'm a member of, and these are actually paid services where you can actually find, like, skip trace, which is just basically a way to detective your way into finding somebody, right? So I found the telephone numbers for this guy. None of them work. I sent him, postcards to their his last address. Nothing worked. I found somebody that knew the guy from like 10 years before. And because she had leased that place that I was looking to buy like 10 years previous, right? So I asked her, she gave me just an email. I sent an email, the guy replied back, and he said, like, how do you get this email? I'm like, well, I just did this and that, and like, I just found you. Is it you? And he was like, yeah, but I'm overseas. I'm like, oh, okay, but I didn't know. I'm in Houston, that's how I, saw your house. So I'm just looking to see what
It
you
was
want to do.
still under his name, right?
Yes, it's still under his name. It was an inheritance. It turns out that the guy was in Afghanistan. He was in service in the military, and he wanted to unload the house, but he was working all the time. He wasn't even here. So that was for me like crazy. So I found this guy. He was in Afghanistan. So the only way that we could communicate was like me waiting like a day, because it was always like 12 hours or like 13 or 14 hours ahead. So if I wrote now, it was going to be sleep. So if I wrote later, I was going to be sleep. So I found him eventually, and I got talking to him, and I said, like, hey, so what do you want to do? And he said, well, I know that the house needs a lot of money to be repaired and all that, but you know what? I just want out. And I said, okay, let me see what I can do. So I came up with a number, which is something, let me tell you, that not a lot of people do. They just want to get their best deal. I didn't want to do that just because the guy told me, like, I lived in that house when I was little. It was my parents' house. Then, we got into some trouble. We rented it out to some bad people. They did some repairs that they shouldn't have done, and it's just looking like really bad right now. But it's really like something that I was proud of that house at some point, but now I know that I just have to sell it. So I knew that I didn't want to take advantage of him by just giving him a couple of $1,000. So I said, listen, let me see what I can do, and let me see what the market is going to bear on that house, and then I'll reach out back. And in the end, we worked out a deal. He made like 18,000 or something for it was really a piece of junk. It was like, really, there was a hole, I don't know, like 6 feet by 6 feet, and it was just crazy. We had to go into the house through one of the windows, because the doors were like all kicked in and they didn't work. It was crazy. So but he still made money, and I still made money on that.
And he didn't expect to make money ever out of that.
He didn't expect to make money. Exactly. So going back to your point, deals can be made, So if you are, I'm going to talk to your audience as well now. So if you are going through a hardship, if you're going through a difficult spot right now, don't just abandon your house. Is what you said, or even if you have to leave, or if you have to move, get in touch with somebody. Somebody's going to know, like myself, we did that. We have done that. We have helped people move out, and we have actually helped people make money, doing that, at least making some money. It's not all lost. So before you think about that solution. It may help you, because I may be able to buy just maybe here in Texas, but I do know people that buy in other states as well, and they may be able to help you as well. That's what I'm saying,
This is the quick tip, guys. When you buy a property and get a loan to buy the property, the bank lends you the money to buy it. So in title, you're the owner, but they're actually they are the owner until you pay them back, right? So if you don't pay them back, what happens is they're going to just warn you until they want to repossess it back. But in order to repossess it back and transfer them to their name, foreclosure on the property is a whole long process. Now, the bank is in the business of the loans. They're not in the business of selling properties. So if you come up with try to keep the property or sell the property, even for less money that you owe, they will always try to negotiate it because they already guaranteed the money with the insurance, most likely. So any money they can get from you or from a purchase is like extra, let's say. So they're always open to negotiate with you before trying to get you out and pay lawyers and realtors and brokers to do the whole transaction and marshal and money to get people out, maybe the tenants or repairs. It's a lot of money that the bank doesn't want to go through that. So they have to hire and hire third parties. So there's always a chance that you can do something with the property if it's still in your name. So if you don't know that, maybe you don't know it, but you usually would know if you're in the property around because they start sending notes that it's going to auction a certain day. So after the auction, well, it goes to other people's hands. And even after the auction, there's something here that you have a certain grace time to still claim for the property if you want it. But always reach out to somebody like Luis, even myself here in the East Coast, and to talk about it. But don't let it go. Even you can still make money and still make a lot of money out of that. Maybe you can keep it. Maybe you can get a partner to do repairs, keep it, and or rent it out. And I was going to ask you something else. Do you deal with, because I know a lot of investors do this in the East Coast, do you do the rent to own program?
I have done that, yes. I have done that twice.
How does that work? Let's say I'm just a guy that doesn't have a house and I'm looking for rent, but I have some extra cash there. I have a good credit, but I'm not fully into buying right now. And what do? I find an investor like you. I start renting. And when did the process occurs, like the transferring thing? Do I need to be qualified, like to buy a house?
Sure. So basically, how it works with a rent-to-own program, usually the people that want to buy something is up with their credit. So maybe their credit is not, perfect score for a bank, So say you have a low credit score of 500 or whatever, that's going to prevent you from finding a bank to lend you money, even if you have money. I have seen people that make a lot of money because of their trades. I from the top of my head, my AC guy, for example, he works, especially here in Houston, with the heat that we have here. He makes a lot of money, but his credit is not the best. So for those kind of people, what happens is that you have options, so if you talk to somebody like me and we can find you a house basically where you are renting with the option of buying. That's kind of what that means, the rent to own program. So you come up with a down payment. That down payment, it doesn't necessarily mean 20%. It can be less, because usually 20% is what they ask you from the bank, right? So how it works is that, if I control this house, if I'm the owner of this house, and say, for example, Emilio, you come to me with that scenario, you have the low credit score, but you have, I don't know, $25,000 that you can put down for this house. That is like, say, for example, the price of the house is $250. So you're coming up with only 10%. That works. So you come up with 25% at 25,000, which is only 10%. I take that and we make a contract so that, say, in 1 year or 2 years or even 5 years, you are going to refinance the house by coming up with the other, say, 25,000 to make it 20%. And then at that time, the bank is going to buy me out. So then you keep paying the bank, and you keep the house, of course, because the house was yours, right? Now, that's how it works in theory. So there are many different things because of the contracts that you can make. But that's pretty much how it works.
So you're the owner of the house, but I go and rent, right? And when I start the lease with you, I have to give you the down payment, or it can happen later in time?
It happens at the same time. It has to be at the same time.
At the same time when I start living there?
Start, yes, when you start, because otherwise, I mean, you're not really buying the house, you just rent it out.
I heard other options that you can like rent it for a year and then they can transfer it into buy for rent to buy.
Right. Those are like variants, of this scenario that I gave you. But usually, if it was me, I would ask you for that money right now because you don't really know what's going to happen in a year. So you don't want to tie the property up with somebody that is not really committed to buying it. Because in the end, you're actually selling the property. Even though you're renting it out right now, they still have the option to buy it. And that's actually in the contract.
But you told me the bank buys you out, but you said you're the owner. So who's the bank? The bank is the one that gave me the mortgage?
I mean, at the beginning, you are the bank. I'm the bank.
Right.
So basically,
I pay you the mortgage.
I'm giving you the right to be in the house while you pay me being the bank, right?
Yes.
And then for me to actually be out of that scenario, of that deal, the only way for that to happen is that you have to refinance. So when you refinance, the bank buys the mortgage that I have, right? And they keep the mortgage and they keep you as
so the bank pays you the balance and then they take care of me. I pay the bank.
Exactly.
It always happens like that, or the owner can stay forever collecting the mortgage?
They can stay for a long time, yes.
They can.
Actually, if you think about it, if I can tell you about my experience and what I know, not many people actually end up buying the property. They end up just living there and just paying rent. But the good thing about that program for me being the owner of the house, is that I don't have to maintain the house because it's your house, right? I'm just like the bank.
But at what point do I get the title transfer?
Pay off the balance.
So when I move, I pay you the 25 grand, and then I refinance, and I still don't have the.
No, you will. At that point, you will, of course.
When I
refinance, when you refinance, I'm out of the picture. So basically, title actually comes to you. And there are some states where you can actually do the title even before that, and that's actually called owner financing. I've done that too.
Okay.
But the difference is that they're not renting; they're actually buying the house, and you're just financing the house for them.
How do I find the rent to owns? I have to go and propose to any landlord. Or I have to find ads saying rent to own.
You have to find ads that do that. You don't really. I mean, you have to find people that do that.
Because I actually do real estate also in New Jersey, and I had a person renting a house, and the tenant said, "You know what? I want to buy this house. Can you ask the owner if he would sell it?" And the owner said, "Yes." Yeah, sure. He said. So he ended up doing the rent to own thing.
Oh, okay.
The guy didn't even think about it.
Right. So it was just like a private deal. Yeah, I mean that can happen too. That can happen too.
As an investor, how do you find your leads, your buyers? Do you do flyers? Do you do marketing? Do you do social media? Do you knock the door, or you do all of them, or you just word by mouth? Because I mean, being an investor, you have in your own LLC or office. That's a lot of work. You just have to go out there and find the deals, right? You can't just sit there waiting for people to come to you. You got to go and get it, right?
Yeah, you gotta go and get it.
How do you get the leads?
So okay, let me just start from the beginning. If that really depends on what the end goal for you is, right?
As an investor.
So yeah, exactly. Even as an investor, I'm just telling you, like, right now, I find the deals online because I'm looking for commercial, like bigger deals, right? And I'm also going through wholesalers. That's basically where I'm finding the deals for that particular niche, which is just multifamily, right? Now, back in the day when I was actually looking for single family houses, I did every single thing that you said. I did door knocking. I did, I sent postcards to different lists. That means, people that may be in foreclosure or in the foreclosure process, people that have had problems with taxes and they owe taxes, and or they're in taxes pre-foreclosure as well. People that are in divorces, people that have equity and that are older, like over 65 that may want to think about, selling their properties. So I've targeted all these people through these lists, right? And so I've done that. I would say that if you are starting out and you don't have a lot of money to start, I would say, just find one or two of these lists and work it. And when I say work it, you have to find a list and you either go there to do door knocking or call them. So find their telephone numbers and call them. But like, that's what you have to do. Like cold calling, or actually be there yourself and just talk to these people. And if you do it long enough and with a lot of people, like in numbers, everything's about numbers, you will find a deal. It's just bound to happen. By doing that.
And real estate, I think, the market has evolved. Now people are much more educated than they were 20, 15 years ago, because now there was a lot of sellers out there looking for realtors. Right now, the sellers, most likely, they just do it themselves online, right? So I think with the years, it's been less and less need for realtors out there, right? But there's nothing that works better if you're starting your career in real estate right now. The best thing that you can do is just make connections. Like Luis was saying, just knocking doors is really effective because you get to connect with the person. You get to ask questions. They trust you when they see you more than if you just get a random email, right? It's always better to do it. And I guess it's the same thing for investors. Doing the connection, shaking hands, asking about the market, asking about, hey, this house is yours. You always ask, I like to go into neighborhoods and just seeing people there in their houses and just asking about if there's any house around there in the area for rent, for sale. How about your house? You never thought about relocating? Sometimes also it's sellers don't want to be asked, hey, you want to sell your house? But sometimes you get them in the way of saying, hey, you never thought about relocating? Yeah, I thought about, where would you go? I thought about going south. Why? Yeah, because, I don't like it here anymore. So are you planning to sell already? Well, maybe. So then you get to the sell part later, right? If you ask a person, do you want to sell? They right away, they get you off. They don't like that much. But if you can get into a conversation and get there, it's easier. And there's nothing else, nothing better than getting leads like in person, I think, in my personal opinion. Do you find these pre-foreclosures with some special program that you pay, like Property Shark, for example?
I don't have a program. I mean, I'm not really going after those anymore. But back in the day when I was actually doing that, I did have a service. I mean, one of them, for example, is a county newspaper that publishes people that will go into foreclosure for taxes, right? That's one. The other is a paid service, and that one gave you the pre-foreclosures as well, but like for banks. So you would have the two, right? And then you just do, what I just told you, like either go after them by knocking on their doors or calling them. And the aspect of it is like what you said. I've seen a lot of people not having success with any of those strategies just because they don't know how to approach people. So like with anything else, this is a people's business. You really have to talk with people. It may be the investor that you want to partner with, or it may be a contractor that you're planning to hire, or it may be a seller that you want to buy the house from. It may be whoever, but you need to talk to people. And if you need to do that, then you might as well just build a relationship always. Yeah. It takes more time, but at the end, it makes sure that your people know that you care. And if they know that you care, they are, they're more likely to do business with you. Otherwise, they're going to see you as just, somebody that's trying to make a profit. And they don't like that. Nobody likes that.
Yeah, guys, you want to be successful in real estate, whether as an investor, as a broker, It's all about connections, and it's not like many will think an office job is very far from being an office job, really. It's just a street job. You have to be in the street. If you don't walk the street, talk to people, you're not going to make any money. You have to be willing to walk out there and just relate to people, just get involved. And like Luis said, you want to make connections, because sometimes people, you meet maybe a seller willing to sell, but then you meet him, he's most likely not going to sell it to you right away or list it with you. But maybe you call him next week, you give him something value. You say, here's the market trend this week or this last month, and talk to him again and provide value to somebody. This works in most relationships. Just create a connection. And then probably after they know you, they like you, they trust you now, and then they will do business with you like in anything else. Now, I want to ask you something, a couple more questions before I give you the final wrap up for you. Now, when you look at, because you told me you're trying to, besides one family houses, you're looking to invest into some bigger asset classes like multiple family, right? 6 units, whatever, 20 units, whatever you can get your hands into. So let's say you find a 6-family house there for sale, busted up, because that, you know, that busted up is a good language between us. When you see something that needs a lot of work, that's gold. Let's say, what is the math that you do first? Let's say when you find a house, it's yours to put an offer right now. What is the math that you do? Like the basic math is, say, I'll buy it or not. What makes you want to buy it?
You look at different things. One of the things that you look at, of course, is if you know the area, you will kind of, most likely you are going to know how much of like what the market value per unit would be in that area. You know, I know areas here in Houston, for example, that the value per unit, and that's market, like top value, right, of a unit. And when I say a unit is when you're talking about like multifamily units, right? So say a, you know, templex, like 10-unit property. So if we have a 10-unit property, and I know that area, the values are, you know, 80,000 per unit, I know that the value of that shouldn't go above 800. So if I'm getting it for 500, it may be a good deal. I just need to know how much of repairs are needed for that particular deal. So that's another point. You need to know how much it needs in repairs.
But let me stop you right there. When we're talking about, some people may not know, we're talking about even apartment units. When it's up to a 5-unit is residential, and when it's more than 5 is already commercial. Am I right? So when you're talking about commercials, how to evaluate a commercial property, the units, don't you evaluate by income and expenses?
Sure. Yeah, and I'm gonna get there.
Okay.
So that what I just told you at least gives you a sense, right? Because if you're there, usually like commercial deals, they don't happen like, you know, okay, I'm gonna buy the property like today, I'm gonna close tomorrow. They take time, and everybody knows that, and the seller knows that, and, you know, brokers know that, right? So because it takes time to do the due diligence that you have to do, right?
Even when it's cash?
Say that again?
Even when it's all cash deal?
Even if it's an all cash deal, you still need time to do everything that you have to do. You have to know, you know, the hidden costs, because the seller might tell you that it's all, you know, pretty and rosy, and in the end it may be that you have a, you know, a plumbing issue with drainage or something.
Yeah.
And it may cost you thousands or tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars to repair. So you always need to take your time before buying a property like that, which doesn't really happen in the single family world. It does happen just a little bit. You know, you get an inspection done, and the inspector goes out and he inspects the property, and he tells you in a day, like, you know, a couple of hours or 3 hours or 4 hours, he's going to tell you, okay, so these are the things that I think need repairing, and these are the things that, you know, you may want to look at, and everything else. So they give you a report very quickly. Whereas in a multifamily deal, if you have 100 units, the inspector basically, or you have to go like to see, maybe not the 100 units, but you still have to see a lot of them and to know what you're doing. So you have to hire people that know what they're doing. So it takes longer, even if it's, all cash deal, it doesn't matter. They still know that you have to take your time to look at that and to look at the numbers too, because as you said, value goes hand in hand with the income that the property produces. So if the income is not there, there is no value. It doesn't really matter. And that's how you know that you're basically buying a good deal too, right? If you have a person that owns a 10-unit property and only 4 of them are rented out, the other 6 are just like falling apart, or somebody lives there but they're not paying because the guy that owns it is not doing a good job by managing the property, right? That's a good opportunity for you to go out there and ask him, like, hey, what do you want to do? I see that the property is just falling apart. You want to sell it? And basically do what I just told you on the door knocking part, but with a bigger property. Granted, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that because there are a lot of deals out there that make sense even without doing that. But I've heard a lot of people that have, they have made a lot of money doing what I just told you. They just go after somebody like, hey, I just wanted to see it. I bought this other property right here, and I just wanted to see, like, if you want to maybe, retire. Or, what's the plan with you? And they may be able to say, I'm thinking about it, but maybe for next year. And then you keep following with them.
Here's my card.
My card. And then you just keep following with them, like, every couple of months you say, like, hey, Mr. Such and such, I'm by your property or whatever, are you still set on selling in a year, or, you want to talk about that now? They may say, you know what, I'm not getting any younger, my family is set, let's do it. And you may be able to actually work out a deal with them, like what you said, right? A seller finance deal where the seller, the owner, actually finances you, and you don't even have to go for a bank or anything, because all they care about is just, being out of the managing side. And if they can get money like monthly, that's all they care about. A lot of people are like that. You just have to find them.
I've met a lot of people also with big multi-unit properties that they made a mistake of running it themselves, right? So they burned out, and then they only wanted out because they never thought about, what if I put it with the property management and just keep that cash flow, right? No, they say, I'm tired of managing this, too many people don't pay, and they went out without thinking that part of putting it under management, right?
Maybe they have, but the property manager is just useless. I've seen that too.
How much is the cut for the property managers? Is it 5%?
Depends on how big the deal is. Like, for example, what I'm paying right now, my property manager is 8%, but he only manages, a couple of properties, right?
Must be good, because when you pay that kind of percentages for good property managers.
He's the best. But not only that, when you have just a couple of properties, that's pretty much the going rate. You pay between 8 and 10% if you have a couple of single family houses. If you have a complex with like 100 properties or so, then the rate, of course, drops to like 2.5%, 3.5%.
So property managers collect all the rents, and they make a deposit in your account?
That's how I work it with mine. Yeah. That's usually how they do it. Yes. They collect everything, they put it in your account, and then you distribute whatever has to be distributed. Or you may have, a company account with an assistant or whatever that oversees that account, of course, an assistant that you trust, that can actually distribute, all the monies and all that. You can have that too. If the complex or the place is really big enough and it gives room for that, then yes, you can have that too.
So if you buy a big multi-unit residential, would you consider having property management plus a live-in super?
For 20 properties, no. You need more than that. You need at least 80 to 90 units for that to make sense. For 20 units, I would just get my guy, the guy that I have, oversee that property, and he doesn't have to be, nobody has to be living there. And for maintenance issues, they would call the property manager, and the property manager would send out somebody to actually check everything that they have or the issue that they have or whatever.
But the good thing about having a super is because many people come daily with problems to solve now.
Sure.
So
No, I
they have to
understand.
call you for the next day, the guys show up, that could be an issue.
But that doesn't work, mathematically, it doesn't work if you only have like 20 units. It doesn't work. I mean, I could actually show you, but I don't have the time or the means to do that right now. But it doesn't work. You really need a bigger amount of units to do that. It doesn't really matter if they call you, you just have to wait. With like, single family houses, they still have to wait. They know that you're not going to be living in the property anyway.
You ask your tenants to pay the repairs themselves and then discount it from the rent?
Not really. I mean, I had one like that, but it didn't work out just because they thought that, nobody was their fault. Nothing was their fault. And it always was. So it's always a problem to do that, to try to charge them for that, So what I do, I'm going to tell you another little secret. So what I do with my properties, at the time of remodeling, I always take care of the water fixtures. They have to be impeccable. They have to be like, brass or like something really, really, really good. Even if it's working right now, that doesn't mean that it's going to work later, So I prefer to change everything once I get in. So I know that they won't have any problems with water. Water actually destroys more than fire, than wind, than hail, than hurricanes, than anything, like a little drop, because
Really?
you don't see it. And it's still like rotting out everything, like destroying everything. And then by the time you see it, or they tell you, right? Because I don't care. Hey, it's just a little drop. But that little drop causes termites and causes, the floors to give in. And then you have foundation issues. And then you have all these problems because of a little drop. Tell me how I know. I've gone through that too. So now I've learned that you have to take care of those things before they happen. And with everything, it's the same with everything else. You have to take all the problems that you can think of and prevent them from happening. That's really the key when managing these properties, If you prevent them from calling you, you're making your life easier in the long run,
Anticipation is power, my friend. Yes. And now,
Yes.
one of the last questions, I promise. If you find the property that you can buy, now let's say one family, what tells you if you should keep it or sell it? The mathematics involved, or you just, depending on the location, what tells you, I'm going to flip this, sell it right away, or I'm just going to keep it and rent it out? What tells you that?
Well, it's actually it's not one thing. It's actually a group of things. Say for example that you find a house, the house is in your location. It meets your criteria for at least location. So it's say for example it's actually close to a school district or within the school district that you like. So it meets that criteria, right? Now you want to find properties in that area as rentals. So that would mean that they would have to be in a certain amount of money, basically. The purchase price would have to be in a certain range for it to work. If it's more than that, it wouldn't work. So you may want to think of wholesaling the property, You may want to think of just getting on the contract for that price, which is actually outside your price to keep it, and say, I'm going to sell it to an end buyer, somebody that wants to live there, for a little discount from the retail price. So that's basically how you work it. You have to have all those numbers in a spreadsheet or like written down or in your head, basically. But you have to know what you want before you can make any number work. So if you know your numbers, then you're going to be able to say, okay, I'm going to keep this one. This one actually works, or I'm going to sell that one because that one is actually more expensive than I'm expecting to pay. Even though it's in my area, it doesn't really meet my criteria for everything else. So I'm going to sell it on.
You ever bought auction properties?
No, but I've been I've gone to them. I've gone to them just to see how it works and everything. It's the frenzy and all that. So a lot of people get crazy in the auctions, you know.
One last question. Would you consider buying outside Texas, like New York, New Jersey? Would you ever buy?
Now that I'm starting to see more about the commercial world and commercial real estate, now I'm talking about commercial, not only about multifamily, which is a part of commercial real estate. It may be possible. It may be possible. I was looking at, I was just looking at it. I wasn't really even thinking about buying that property, but I was looking at two properties in Florida, for example. I've been to Florida many times, and I even have some family there. And I was just, trying to work out the numbers. I then realized that doing that, you have to have boots on the ground. You have to have somebody there to tell you, what I know about Houston, for example. I know about the areas and what the cost per unit should be. And I don't really know those things outside Houston. So that takes, it has to be taken into account.
Right, maybe we do a deal in the future. Who knows, right?
Sure.
People that think like you, investor with a lot of experience, they know they live and breathe passive income. So having properties, since you understand properties how you do, you understand that you don't have to be there. You don't have to be in control of the property, watching it to have that cash flow come into your bank account, right? You don't need that. So I guess you're opening up to those. Is this very complicated to own 20 properties? Is your life very complicated because of that?
Not really.
Not really?
No, not really. I mean, as long as you surround yourself with good people, a good team, and I have that now. I have a good attorney, an individual attorney that I go to for like different things, and I have an attorney, group also for the bigger things like other stuff. I'm not going to go into that. So I have that. Then I have CPAs. Then I have contractors. I have AC guys, like a particular AC guys, plumbers. So all the different trades. I have my property manager who's really, really good. So I have all these people, so I trust them, right? And every once in a while, of course, you have to take care of things yourself. But normally, some other people are taking care of my stuff. And while you grow, that's what you need.
Okay, and your last advice for somebody that wants to start in the investment world, a young person starting like you started, without much, without knowledge. Give me a last tip for somebody that's starting in the investment world.
I'm going to tell you something that I wish somebody had told me, a few years ago. Get together with people that know, people that have the experience, and when I mean get together with them, it doesn't have to be Grant Cardone, because you're not going to find him because it's like over the top. You have to find people that in your world, right? You have to ask around. You have to go to these meetings. You have to join Facebook, and see who the big players, or at least the players, are in your area. If you do that, you're going to learn a ton, I'm telling you. You're going to learn so much. And then after doing that little bit, they may be able to actually even bring you into one of those deals with them. I didn't have that. I wish I had, but I didn't have that, and that's one of the things that I would recommend anyone to do. You can actually connect with me as well. If people are, listening, they can text me. And I said text just because I rarely take up the phone. I just, let it go to voicemail or text, and then I call back. But my number is 361-935-4638. That's 361-935-4638. And that's, available for anyone that is listening to this to text me and to ask me, any possible questions that they may have apart from this conversation,
Yeah, and man, share this video in your social media. Maybe people can text you there in this past video, and you're always going to get the messages about who texted you, who sent the message. And
sure.
Hey, Luis, it's been an honor for me. I learned a lot today. I hope everybody learned also, and you can do this. And there's certainly something that you would not do alone is in real estate. You cannot do it alone. You have to be connected, like Luis said. Be connected with people around you that know about this. Get engaged in Facebook groups, podcasts. There's a ton of things to learn out there. A lot, maybe, but just try to connect and aligned with what you are looking for. Thanks a lot, Luis. I hope to see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Very soon, man.
Sure thing. Thank you for having me.
See you very soon. Let's do it again.
Sure thing.
Take care.
Bye then.
Bye.
Bye.